Hello and welcome to another modelling video. This is Alan from the Man at YouTube with another tank review. Today we will be building and presenting the Trumpeter Russian KV big turret tank, also known as the KV-1 early type, used by the Soviet Union in the Second World War. It is a fan favourite in video games as well as the anime Girls and Panzer. They do use the later war variant with a different turret. Anyway, we'll go straight ahead with what is currently available to us. We have 4 runners, or 5 of them, a rubber set of tracks, as well as a slided mould hull for very easily assembly. A set of Russian water slide decals were pretty much a joy to use, which we will not be employing, and a set of plain to read instructions. More of a traditional layout of a armor construction, but not so punishing if you are new or casual to the genre of such a small scale of tank. We go straight into the wheel and suspension assembly. This does take a little bit of while to cut out every wheel on the first run and cleaning up all of the nubs. Assembles fairly easily with plastic cement, and more importantly with the socket assembly, they're quite easy to glue together without falling apart and getting the alignment just right. Unfortunately, putting on the tracks later on has been much less of a joy. If there is an alternative or availability of aftermarket tracks, definitely reach for that. If not, super glue does work with this, but take it at a very slow step-by-step basis and make sure that the join is somewhere that's a bit hidden. During the building phase, this is the hardest bit and will consume the majority amount of time invested in putting together and cleaning up. Moving straight to the hull, being pre-assembled and very strong. It's going to be squared off nicely with no gaps. We add some details such as the shackles at the front and rear as we wait for the glue to set for the wheels. It's maybe best to call this a session and let it to dry and rest. The rest can be worked absolutely independently or separated from the main bottom hull. The turret goes together like a box, but does have a seam present all the way the front and rear, which will need addressing with putty, even though it is pretty cleverly hidden. The turret allows for turn articulation as well as the gun to go up and down. I chose to glue this in place to prevent paint scratching. All the other items just snap into place quite easily with a little bit of plastic cement. There is also gaps once the top plate is put on top, but again, nothing too hard for very thick primer or putty to resolve. The hull is also very impressively injection molded into one piece, however doesn't give you much playability with the hatches or manholes for further modification or the addition of figures. A little bit of work, that shouldn't be too hard. Some machine guns and stowage, it can be added, at least the machine guns is mandatory, and a rubber tow cable is attached from the side to the front, which is very tricky and requires the addition of super glue. I would probably advise getting some sort of braided copper wire with the sheath removed from electronic appliances or some other replacement for a far easier job, as the detail of the rubber is not that great and I definitely regret adding it. The top and bottom hulls can be glued together at the final stage with a bit of time for everything to rest and dry up. A bit of putty can be applied at the 2 seams and sanded up. This concludes into a completed model, which proportion wise and general looks is quite excellent. Definitely stands out, enjoyable enough build, and definitely attemptable by most skill levels and collectors, modelers alike. Very happy with it. Let's get straight into the painting stage, though the downside is the tracks are just horrendous and does spoil majority of the experience. Due to the strengths and weaknesses of this model, it has been decided to glue and finish it in one piece, as well as to paint it in one piece, as the bottom will not be visible upon display. Tamiya primer has been employed to spray the whole thing as a undercoat. The bottom has been done first, allowed to dry, flipped, and the top sprayed as well. In mimicking the anime scheme, it is a pure white. I'd much rather go for something that's far more weathered and rugged to the period. Started off everything in a few tones of Russian green, a dark drab, and blended it all together to look quite nice if it was to be a finished green kit, all in Mr. Colour lacquers applied via airbrush. Maybe a step that should have been saved for a later date, but good freehand practice regardless. Clear smoke was applied in some undercarriage areas under the wheels, the bottom, and underneath any shadowing areas of the turret for a natural light effect. After drying, the whole project has received gloss clear lacquer, normally applied for automotive cars, mixed with standard lacquer thinner. Being industrial stuff, didn't melt the paint, didn't blow up the kit. Followed with hairspray, hand brushed applied everywhere for paint chipping, which will happen next. It should be noted the drying time between the base coating, the clear coating, and the hairspray should be about a day or more apart for maximum chemical hardening and the strongest possible bond of the paint without any damage occurring for the chipping stage. After the hairspray has dried, just like the greens, we have a selection of a few greys and grey-white and built it up for a nice winter white camouflage, yet sufficient amount of general wear, tear and soot that it's not a really solid, terrible white. Once that white has quickly dried over up to 10 minutes, using the black of a hobby blade and some other tools, I scratched up the surface in a natural way, as well as picking out any edges where the paint is likely to lift in real life. The model looks pretty good at this stage, and the rest of it goes purely on taste and how realistic you want it, dirty, clean or whatnot. I've added the water slide Girls and Panzer decals, cleared that, and started updating sessions of pigments, washes, further chipping through pencil and pigment weathering, and a build up of PVA glue and snow flock for a fresh snow look. A lot of the washes were heavily focused on a black to pick up fine detail, but previous to that, white for the build-up of snow and slush in all sorts of areas such as the track links and deep detail. To bring out more green paint from the chipping, a little green wash was applied here and there to add on to the original effect. Each wash step either used oil washes or enamel washes, and as to not blend them together or have them lift or cross-contaminate, they were sealed after sufficient amount of drying time with a clear gloss so they can build on top of each other, as well as the pigments. Other steps just before the weathering included hand painting, which was using burnt iron to hand paint the tracks, and things like gunmetal and other dark metallics for stowage, machine guns and other bits and pieces, which this does not have a lot. The majority of Russian tanks are just spray painted in real life. I'm very happy how the model has popped out and finished. Really enjoying the effect of selective weathering washes with various pigments and inks, as well as the new paint chipping method that I've been utilizing of late, and most importantly using diorama flock on the actual models itself for the build-up of white or a fine brown flock around tank tracks, which I haven't used on this one, onto other models. I think it just builds another realm of a build-up of dirt or the natural environment and terrain making an impact on vehicles. It's starting to tell a story, it's filling out, and you can tell what the vehicle has gone through or what theatre of battle or backstory just by the condition of the paint, the markings, all that sort of thing. The whole process, even though it took quite a while, was a sufficient output and a lot of fun to do, touching it up here and there for a few minutes and moving on to another project. Once uploaded on social media, the feedback of it was overall quite positive. Really in the mood for snow weathering, so I'm going to be carrying it on to some science fiction subjects and other kits, mostly Mash & Krieger, Gundams, that sort of thing, until it's generally out of my system. This concludes this build. Thank you very much for watching. As always, until next time, stay tuned for further content. Have a look at the description for references and further links on the tank or build. I've also got links to social media where I put work in progress and other content that may be of interest, or information about various projects and platforms I may be online. If you're new to this, I have done quite a few 70-second builds, and there's a whole playlist on YouTube. Catch you guys next time, and stay tuned for further content. See you later.